Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto had enough of Team 7. For it had come under the attack of the most powerful and dangerous of tailed beasts, Kyuubi, or nine-tailed fox. Unleashed upon the village from his confinement by a malicious person that sought to bring ruin to this village, Nine Tails had caused unprecedented amount of damage to the village, leveling entire swaths of it by mere roaring. Nearly all of Konoha's shinobi rose up and answered the call of duty, striking at the beast with all their might and power, yet it all seemed to do nothing but irritate the beast even more. And the angrier he grew, more and more of loyal sons and daughters of Konoha fell to him, the tally already reaching past hundreds, and now several thousands of shinobi had served their lives to this beast of calamity. And all this time, the beast was under the control of the man that had unsealed him, the one who attacked Kushina Uzumaki just as she gave birth to her triplets, and was trying to kill Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage and husband to Kushina. The two seemed evenly matched for some time, yet victory ultimately was claimed by Minato, who managed to sever the connection between Kyuubi and this man, who claimed to be Madara Uchiha himself. Once it was done, however, Fox regained his freedom at last, and it was set to not be imprisoned again by anyone, and with greater than before rage and power, it began to destroy Konoha, and in mere minutes it achieved more than he had done under the control of Madara. Shinobi were already losing hope and fighting out simple stubbornness to surrender, when Minato had managed to intervene and teleport the beast away, saving his village and his people. But merely relocating Nine Tails was not enough, because now there was an even more dangerous task ahead of him: resealing that creature. For that very purpose he teleported to the site with his exhausted wife Kushina and their children, Natsu, Narumi, and Naruto. He already made his decision to have the Nine Tails split into two parts and sealed into his two eldest, Natsu and Narumi, believing that the two will be able to handle the beast's power. He didn't know if Kushina would be able to handle the resealing, since the childbirth was extremely difficult and had nearly cost her life, especially with Naruto. He needed to act, and act now, as Nine Tails was regaining his bearings. Kushina, I must seal the beast again. Please, lend me your strength, hold him at bay. Minato asked of Kushina, with her crying out of pain, with golden chains shooting out from her back and restraining the beast. That's it, Kushina. Now just hold him, Minato. I can't. Kushina wheezed out before she fell down and lost conciseness, her chains dispelled the very next instant. Kyuubi roared and already began to storm towards Minato and Kushina, intent to kill them with their children. Minato already prepared to teleport his family out of here, when he heard soft feet land near him, forcing him to look to his left, widening his eyes in surprise. There stood a tall, beautiful woman with long mane of dark red hair, dressed in red and black garments, with a long tachi sword strapped to her hip. She gazed with her crimson eyes at the beast, before the shape of her iris changed into that of Sharingan and then it was activated, immediately stopping the beast in its tracks and literally freezing him in his place. Minato breathed out the name of the woman. Tomoe? Minato could hardly believe his eyes, with the woman not even sparing him a glance, far too concentrated on containing the beast. How did you? Does it matter, right now? You wanted to seal that beast back, then get to it, Minato. It takes my all just to maintain my jutsu on him, so hurry it up. Tomoe practically snarled at him, as her right eye bled and she felt the pressure from maintaining her ability. Yes, thank you Tomoe. Minato thanked her in heavens for this opportunity, as he quickly went ahead and performed the needed hand signs. Reaper Death Seal. Tomoe had nearly turned her head to Minato when she heard him but restrained herself. The very next moment, the air grew cold and heavy, as if death itself had appeared here, and both of them knew that it was true, with Minato witnessing Shinigami firsthand. Mortal, for what purpose did you call upon me in this realm? The Shinigami spoke to Minato in a chilling cold tone and voice. I summoned you to have the Nine Tails divided in two and his halves sealed into my eldest children, Natsu and Narumi. Minato spoke to it, with Shinigami seemingly unmoved by his plight. Please, I beg of you. The fate of my village and all of my people is at stake. I care not for them, mortal, but I will do what you ask. Shinigami spoken and went to work. With his ethereal blade, Reaper divided the frozen beast, before grasping both of the souls with his hands. The moment it happened, Tomoe had released her ability and dropped to the ground, panting and breathing heavily, her nostrils filled with blood that rushed out and whole body going numb from the stress, yet her will maintains her awake, as she watched the two halves of Kyuubi being sealed in the children. Shinigami finished his work quickly, and then turned to Minato, prepared to claim his prize. I've done your bidding, now you will pay for summoning me. Shinigami spoke as a matter of fact and began to reach for Minato. However, the moment when Shinigami was supposed to grab Minato's soul, something completely unexpected happened. Shinigami, the god of death and one to claim all souls, couldn't grasp Minato, who didn't even know what was happening. It was only a second later that Shinigami spoke up, his harsh voice now filled with disdain and rage. "How dare you, mortal, to deny me my rightful prize? You think that tricking death personified will not go unpunished?" Shinigami roared at Minato, who flinched and took a step back out of fear. "You may have substituted your soul with someone else's in the past, but that doesn't mean I will let this slight stand. You wished for your eldest to have the beast's power, and now you will have your youngest pay for the crime against me." The ghostly hand shot towards crying Naruto, grasping him. "No." Minato tried to stop the Shinigami, but was unable, as he was frozen in place. Shinigami reached for the child's soul and was prepared to take it for himself right away, but another thought crossed his mind, born out of malice and anger. Instead of claiming the child right away, he shall make this mortal suffer and watch, as his child is taken by death, piece by piece, while he is unable to do anything. Shinigami grasps Naruto's soul and brands it, immediately putting a stop to Naruto's cries, as a small piece of the child's soul is taken by Shinigami as an appetizer. Once he has done so, he turns to struggling Minato and speaks once more. "For your gall and disrespect of this ritual, you and your wife shall watch as this child pays for your crime. Day by day, his soul and all of his being shall be consumed by me, and soon, before long, all that there will be left of your youngest is an empty husk, as his soul is sent to Yomi, to be served on the platter before me and my brothers. That is your punishment, mortal." And with that said, Shinigami had dispelled himself out of this world. In that moment, Tomoe saw how Minato dashed towards his children, checking first on his eldest, and only then going to his silent youngest, grasping for him and shaking his hand away. Tomoe knew not what had transpired between Minato and Shinigami, but she understood that whatever had happened, Naruto was now the one paying the price for dabbling with powers beyond men's control. It was only then that she had allowed herself to be taken by weakness and fell, closing her eyes. Unknown to all of mortals, by Juu, and even Shinigami, there was one more spectator of this event, one that paid extreme attention to what had transpired. For millennia, he had watched mortals witness their cycle of endless destruction, carnage and suffering, and brought about by shinobi and their wars, fueled by greed, ambitions and hatred. He saw how his very own children and their descendants, the Uzumaki, were made part of that cycle and were consumed for trying to break out of it. His people, their homes and land, all was now ruin and dust, and those that remained were little more than shades of the past, fading away as the dawn rises and brings about the death of his civilization. For millennia he watched, and now, witnessing how the last flicker of hope for his people is now destined to be snuffed out, he breaks his watch. He has had it with universe taking away all that he cherished. He was going to retaliate against it, and to do this, he shall do what even beings like him would dare not to. He shall go to Yomi, and seek out the one who commands these Shinigami. 6 days later. Konoha's hospital. "Well, it looks like your blood pressure is normal, and all of the other tests show that you're free to go home, Tomoe." Tsunade Senju spoke, as she looked at the file, while Tomoe had breathed, before starting to dress up in her usual garments. "However, I would like to remind you, that because of your prolonged usage of your Sharingan and seeing the condition it has left you in, I had sent the report to Hokage. You know what that means, don't you?" "You don't have to tell me, Tsunade, I long realized that my days as a shinobi were coming to an end," Tomoe said with some resignation in her voice, as she pulled up her jacket. "How bad did it progress this time?" "Not as much as I had feared and more than I actually hoped," Tsunade admitted. "You should be fine to utilize chakra and most jutsu, even genjutsu, but any utilization of Sharingan, not to mention Mangekyo, and the prognosis isn't looking great. You were still good to go 6 days ago, before the attack, but now, let's just say that you are at the limit of your allowed health. Use Sharingan or even activate it, and then it'll probably be it for you," Tsunade told Tomoe, who fastened her sword on her hip. Tomoe simply nodded to her, grateful that she didn't lie to her and understanding that she was right. She herself had been about it for a long time now, ever since the war had ended and she was left with nothing but emptiness and void, as well as regrets, sorrow and pain that still lingered in her heart. At least in war she was able to quell her sorrows by drowning them in sounds of battle and death, where she earned her nicknames of Devil of Konoha and Death Queen of Konoha. And those two were just the most famous titles by which enemies of Konoha and what few friends she had knew. Tomoe Uchiha, one of the most dangerous and deadly shinobi on the face of earth and a recognized strongest Uchiha in village. Widely believed to be an equal in power and skills to Madara Uchiha in his prime, there are very few who would want to make an enemy out of one kunoichi that made Kushina Uzumaki, her former teammate and rival, look weak by comparison. Yet, for all her power, accomplishments on the battlefield and her service record to Konoha, that rivaled that of Minato and Kushina combined, Tomoe wasn't as fortunate in life as were former teammate and the man that she once loved, and now was married to that said teammate. She was born to Yumiko Uchiha and Raiko Senju, the only son of second Hokage Tobirama Senju, from whom she inherited her innate abilities and strong chakra. However, unlike Tsunade and her brother Nawaki, Tomoe was born out of wedlock and therefore wasn't recognized as part of Senju clan, while Uchiha clan wanted nothing to do with a bastard child of second Hokage. Add to that her mother dying a few days later due to childbirth complications and her father being murdered on the mission by the third Raikage, Tomoe was left alone in this world just a few days after coming to this world. Both Senju and Uchiha wanted to be rid of the child, whom they viewed with contempt and disdain, but before anyone even dared to take a step towards her, Mito Uzumaki, widow of first Hokage, stepped in and took Tomoe as her own. She didn't listen to anyone when they demanded that she leave the girl alone, and when she started hearing threats being made towards her, she silenced everyone that even dared to look funny towards Tomoe. First Jinchuriki of Nine Tails was a woman of formidable character, one that not even Hashirama and Tobirama dared to challenge, and other Senju clansmen had to remain silent. Mito raised Tomoe as if she were her own daughter, and to this day Tomoe remembers Mito only as a loving daughter would remember her caring mother. Aside from teaching Tomoe secrets to the arts of shinobi and developing her natural skills in elements and swordsmanship, Mito passed on to Tomoe her knowledge of sealing arts, something that was only shared among the Uzumaki. Before her passing, Tomoe had managed to master most of what Mito had given to her, making her one of the best masters of sealing arts in existence. A natural genius, raised in ways of Senju, with powers of Uchiha and knowledge of Uzumaki, Tomoe was practically destined for greatness, yet all she wished was to stay by her mother's side. Unfortunately for her, that wasn't to come, as when Kushina arrived to the village, the Nine Tails was sealed in her, with Mito now being on the brink of death. The last moments of Mito were spent with her daughter, calming her and telling her how happy she was to have such a wonderful daughter. Mito passed away in Tomoe's embrace, and since then, Tomoe was left alone again. Uzumaki Princess had made a will in which she named Tomoe as her heiress and made sure that everything that Mito owned, including her great library, was left with Tomoe. However, the village and third Hokage refused to grant that last request of a woman that had given her entire life to this village, and so they've decided to divide it between Tomoe, Kushina and village itself, or more appropriately, greedy counselors and Hokage that wished to get their hands on what Mito owned. To this day Tomoe hadn't forgiven them for this slight, while Kushina hadn't forgiven Tomoe for what she considered to be theft of what was rightfully hers. It is safe to say that their relations were never amicable past that point. Years followed after Mito's death, and as the new war came, so did Tomoe come to shine and realize herself as a great warrior and shinobi. Her exploits rivaled those of Minato, and where he was simply hated, she was feared. Having quickly progressed through the ranks of shinobi, becoming a Jonin at 10, Chonin at 12 and Jonin at 15, with her feats growing in merit and greatness. But, it wasn't fame or glory that Tomoe sought, but affections of Minato Namikaze, a boy and later man that had captured her heart very early on. She had tried to win his affections, but when she saw that he didn't view her as she did him, and that he was in love with Kushina, Tomoe decided to not stand in their way, even if it was very painful for her. She was almost starting to come to terms with her decision, when one day, some 3 years ago, Minato actually came to her, looking worse for wear. She knew that Kushina was temperamental and that it could be exhausting handling her, and Tomoe honestly didn't even know how Minato handled her when she could barely stand her. That day the two had a really big fight. Tomoe didn't know all the details, but it was clear that it was serious enough to make Minato leave Kushina that night and seek her out. Young Uchiha didn't even know how did it come to, but that night she and Minato did something for which he was remorseful on the morrow. While that was the best night Tomoe had, her hopes and excitement were crushed when Minato had left her without as much as a good enough apology. She realized that to him, she was just a stress reliever, someone to help vent out frustrations, and it made Tomoe feel sick, and she would come to wish that this was the only feeling she would have left after him. As it turned out, Minato left Tomoe with something she didn't expect, when a few weeks later she discovered that she was pregnant. Shocked and confused, unable to fully understand what she should do, Tomoe went to Minato and told him about her pregnancy. It was clear that he wasn't ready for something like that, and he wasn't going to abandon Kushina, now that he was once again with her. He had asked Tomoe to abort the child and swear to him that she wouldn't tell who the father was. Needless to say, when faced with real Minato Namikaze, Tomoe stated that she won't kill her child, and that she will keep it, but she did promise not to tell anyone who was the father. She decided against it because it would only paint a giant target on her back with Kushina wanting to take the shot. When her pregnancy became obvious to everyone and Tomoe was forced to step down from her duties, she simply stated that the father of her child died during one of the battles, a common thing to occur in war, and she was left alone. Tomoe delivered her child, ironically, the very same day that Kushina had delivered hers, on October 10, giving birth to a beautiful boy with dark red hair and his mother's eyes. She named her son Masamune, and those were the happiest days in Tomoe's life, as she fully dedicated herself to her son and was even planning to leave shinobi ranks to raise him. However, fate is a cruel mistress towards Tomoe, and even now she decided to torment her. A few months after giving birth, Tomoe had woken up, ready to feed her child, only to find her son in his crib, not breathing and growing colder with every second. Shock and crushing realization set in Tomoe quickly enough, yet she refused to admit it, as she tried desperately to have her son wake up, but nothing, not even Tsunade, was able to help her. In the end, Tomoe was forced to admit that her son, her precious little child and dearest person in her life, was dead. Nobody knew for certain why and how did it happen, but villagers and shinobi alike quickly began to blame Tomoe for this, calling her child killer and such, with people like Kushina only adding fuel to that. For months Tomoe was unable to find consolation and peace, grieving her son's death, blaming herself for it and gradually succumbing to darkness and desire to end her suffering. Had it not been for Tsunade, who stayed in the village to take care of poor woman, and Tomoe's best friend Amagi, Tomoe would have long ended her life. Instead, she decided to use that sorrow and grief and turn it into a flame that would burn her enemies alive, and with newly gained Mangekyo Sharingan, Tomoe became fury personified. If before she was just feared as a dangerous enemy, then now she was feared as a vengeful spirit made flesh. She didn't hesitate, showed no remorse and never held back in her battles, taking hundreds of lives, even killing Third Reikage and forcing Kumagakure to sue for peace. And in nearly all of her battles she made extensive use of her new Sharingan abilities, with first one being called Takamagahara. This ability allowed Tomoe to create a wide field in which her enemies would find themselves trapped and unable to do anything, not even take a breath. Everything within that field would be frozen, save for what Tomoe wished to remain mobile, with not even Minato not able to escape such a trap. Third Hokage too fell into that trap, before his head lost connection with the rest of his body. As for her second ability, it was something that was even more dangerous than her first ability, and she only used it a couple of times before. However, her usage of Mangekyo didn't come without price, only Tomoe decided not to notice it, as she was performing at her best. Only after Tsunade had to perform a forceful examination did it come to light that Tomoe's body was starting to suffer from effects of constant usage of Mangekyo. Her Senju blood had prevented her from developing blindness and made her Sharingan as strong as it could be, but sheer amount of time she used it was enough to leave a mark on Tomoe. Her chakra pathways and body were suffering from extreme pressure upon them and deteriorated when she used her abilities. If she wasn't careful, Tomoe would die from simply using her abilities, and so when the war ended, she ceased usage of her abilities. The only time afterwards she used her Sharingan was when she had trapped Nine Tails into Kamagahara, and that one had landed her in hospital. Now Tomoe wasn't even allowed to ever utilize her Sharingan, else she dies with near complete certainty. Finishing dressing up, Tomoe fixed up her hair a little bit and walked out from the curtain and stepped closer to Tsunade. "So, this is it for me?" Tomoe asked her, with Tsunade nodding to her. "Can't say I'll miss being a shinobi, if I'm being honest. Well, at least I'll have more time to spend for everything else. You could always ask to be put in academy as a teacher. If anyone could teach those brats what it means to be a shinobi." "Don't even think about it," Tsunade chuckled lightly when she heard that. "I have had my fill of academy the first time I went there. I won't be spending the rest of my life teaching up and coming heroes of Konoha how to tie up their shoes. No, I think I really did have enough of shinobi life. Maybe it's time to see if there really is more to life than just service to the village that will throw you out like garbage first time it gets the opportunity." "Since when did you become such a cynic?" Tsunade asked her. "Since I was born," Tomoe answered. "Sorry if I don't preach will of fire and speak about sacrificing oneself for village. I like to practice what I preach, and following hollow ideals isn't one of those things. You know, that is one of the reasons why people try to avoid you, Tomoe," Tsunade pointed out. "You would do well not to voice your ideas without caution, especially now." "You have nothing to worry about, Tsunade. It's not like I'm the most socially approachable person, so you can relax," Tomoe sighed, as she moved towards door. "Leaving for home, I hope?" Tomoe clearly heard a small request in Tsunade's voice. "In a bit. I'll just make a stop before that," Tomoe said, opening door and stepping through it. "I hope it's not at Naruto's room." Tsunade caught Tomoe looking her in the eye, already understanding that she was on point. Tomoe, it's not normal for you, or anyone else, to be visiting a baby of your rival, especially when he isn't well. You know, rumors have already spread about it and people are starting to think that you might be connected to Naruto's condition. And since when did I care about people's opinion? Tomoe asked Tsunade, as they continued to make their way. For most of my life people have been belittling, accusing and blaming me for something. One more thing won't make much a difference for me. And as for that kid, I don't really see him as Kushina's son. Tomoe, he isn't Masamune, and... Tsunade tried to speak up, but the moment she met Tomoe's glare, she shut up. Don't, Tsunade. Just don't. Tomoe warned her, before resuming walking. It's not about what you thought, and I must have spoken wrong. I don't see Naruto as simply Kushina's son, I just see him as a poor child that has seemingly been abandoned by everyone, including his parents. He is constantly under surveillance and there are nurses and doctors monitoring his condition. Tsunade countered. I come to him twice a day to check up on him. Yeah, monitoring, checking up, surveying. Tomoe shook her head. Tell me, how many of you have just come in and just sat there with him, kept him company? Maybe, held his hand to make sure that he knows that he isn't alone? The answer is simple, none. Sorry if I come off as weird, but it just doesn't sit right with me, Tsunade, especially with his parents not even bothering to be with him for more than a few minutes. Do please remember that Minato is a Hokage and that we've just been through the worst devastation of our village since its conception, and that Kushina is a feeding mother of 2. Tsunade reminded to Tomoe. 3, Tomoe said. Sorry? 3, not 2. Naruto too is her child. Tomoe reminded Tsunade. I remember it all, yet Minato finds time for seemingly everything, including his wife and children if Amagi is to be believed, while Kushina doesn't even want to look at Naruto. Tomoe. You realize that the kid isn't long for this world, right? Tsunade said in a saddened tone, with Tomoe not reacting to it. We've done everything we could, I've tried every single medical jutsu I could remember, and yet nothing, not a single thing helps him. He is just dying, and it is devastating for both parents, and they are dealing with it however they can. By pretending that he is already dead and leaving him here alone to pass away in these cold, uncaring walls, surrounded by people who wouldn't even take time to sit with him. Tomoe commented with harsh tone. I know that he is not long for this world, Tsunade, and that whatever it is that kills him is beyond your abilities. I honestly don't know how he is still going, either through fate's perverse mercy, or because of some other reason, but the least we can do for the kid is to make him feel better, make him feel cared for. Dying alone and without anyone around, that isn't a death I would wish for any child. When did you become such a good Samaritan? Tsunade asked her in a slightly annoyed tone. It's called decency and humanity, Tsunade. Maybe you should try it sometimes. It does wonders for a person and soul. Tomoe retorted. Indeed it does. The two heard a soft voice ahead of them, making them stop and look at the person. Before them stood a stunningly beautiful woman with chocolate brown long hair reaching to her hips, with purple eyes, dressed in a dark kimono with crane motif on it, which hugged her very impressive figure snugly, while also wearing a light long open red coat over kimono. She had a soft smile on her face, as she looked at her friend, who nodded to her, before bowing before Tsunade out of respect, with the woman in question simply nodding her. This beauty was Amagi, Tomoe's closest friend and head priestess of goddess Inari in the local shrine temple, as well as the only priestess serving there. Little is actually known about Amagi's past, save for the fact that she had served as priestess of Inari for most of her life and came to Konoha when she heard that the shrine there wasn't attended to and was practically forgotten. Amagi managed to somehow not only gain citizenship, but also permission to repair and reopen the temple for the people, with none knowing how she managed that. Tomoe too didn't know how did she accomplish it, but what she did know about Amagi was that she is a sincere, peaceful and respectful young woman that makes heads turn of nearly every man that sees her. Among kunoichi and civilians none can compete with Amagi in sheer beauty, for she has a face of a goddess and a figure-fitting one, with Jiraiya having been caught trying to catch a glimpse of her outside of her usual kimono more times than he was in peeping in hot springs. Even Tsunade was slightly jealous of Amagi, who had everything that was needed to conquer anyone she could have set her sights upon. Fortunately for the populace, or unfortunately, depending on the opinion, Amagi had little to no interest in romance, as she was dedicated to her calling and didn't want to abandon it. Not that she wasn't against a little bit of flirting and compliments, she simply once told Tomoe that during her younger days she was quite a kitsune, with a soft chuckle followed afterwards. The way Tomoe understood it, Amagi has had her wild days and now decided to put it behind her. Despite the fact that Amagi had literally no interest in most things shinobi and hidden villages, Amagi and Tomoe quickly became friends, and without her, Tomoe most likely wouldn't have recovered after losing her son. The two were a common sight in the village, with Tomoe enjoying Amagi's company and their talks about all sorts of things, from arts to religion and mythology, interests to which Tomoe possessed, thanks to Mito teaching her more than just how to kill, steal and be a shinobi. Uzumaki Princess raised Tomoe to be a culturally attuned person, someone who wasn't just a blunt weapon without any grace, but a graceful, educated and spiritually rich person, even if Tomoe didn't show it. Amagi was quick to discover Tomoe's softer and more humane side, which brought them together, as Amagi was someone people would describe as having a bleeding heart for everyone. While shinobi in their vast majority weren't very religious or spiritually rich and interested in philosophy, religion, mythology and so forth, Amagi wasn't the most popular person among them, often even being called a fool because of her beliefs in things like gods, yokai, spirits, ghosts and so forth. Amagi wasn't really upset because of it and doesn't mind people speaking like that. What she can't abide is when people are trying to force others' beliefs upon others, caring not for the feelings of the enforced ones. And as for the common people, not counting counselors, Amagi is most definitely not just a very popular person, but a highly respected and even revered one, since she was head priestess of Inari, goddess of fertility, agriculture, trade and many other things, which were central in peasants, traders and other common folks' lives. She performed burying ceremonies, weddings and so forth, so people loved her for both her role and for her persona. Overall, the population of Konoha was nice towards Amagi, in worse cases neutral towards her. Even Uchiha clan, surprisingly for all, didn't dare to disrespect her, and since many of the Uchiha clansmen had their own small shops and businesses in their own district, they came to shrine to pray for success and good trade. It was, however, surprising for Tomoe to see her friend here, since she expected her to be very busy with burial ceremonies, prayers for the dead and so forth, not to mention rebuilding her shrine, if it was caught in the destruction. Amagi, I wasn't expecting to see you here. Are you all right? Tomoe asked her. Were you and your shrine caught in the devastation? I'm quite well, all things considered. Thank you for asking, Tomoe. I was fortunate that the shrine was some ways away from Nine Tails' path of destruction, so the shrine suffered only superficial damage. I'll have it repaired in no time, once people are finished with their own works. Amagi answered. And here I thought you've already had gotten yourself a brigade of simpletons repairing that temple of yours. Why the wait when you can just ask for it to be repaired? Surely some rich businessmen will be willing to accommodate their favorite fortune-teller. Tsunade snidely stated, with Tomoe giving her a cold glare, but Amagi didn't seem to be fazed in any way at the insult. The people have far more important things on their mind right now, and it is not my place or time to distract them with my small-time problems, Lady Tsunade. Amagi retorted. And like I said, the damage is mostly superficial and nothing was damaged seriously, so I count myself very fortunate, unlike so many others that are now without home or worse, without someone dear to them. Then why don't you go and pray for those poor unfortunate souls, like you priestesses seem to always do all the time? Maybe you could also ask your deity to have them restored for life? I'm sure if you ask very nicely, that fox of yours will bring them back, Tsunade stated with blatant sarcasm in her voice. Tsunade. Tomoe was about to stop her, but Amagi didn't let Tomoe finish. Tomoe, it is quite all right. It is true that I pray for those that have died on that night, and even now, in my thoughts, I am praying for them to find their way to better world. And it is unfortunate that they are gone, taken away prematurely and in such a horrid way, Amagi stated to Tsunade. And if I could, I would ask for Goddess Inari to bring them back, but I can't, and I know that Inari doesn't hold that kind of power, and that Izanami governs over the souls of dead in Yomi, where they are headed, but I know that she too wouldn't grant me such a wish. Then what good those gods are if they can't do jack about anything? Tsunade asked of Amagi. Gods do not exist just to grant people their wishes, Lady Tsunade. Gods exist for a reason that is their existence and purpose, just as we all do. I may be mistaken, but gods exist to govern a plane that is beyond for us now, and to preserve the realm we reside in now. We may not see them or even feel them, but that doesn't mean that they do not exist, Amagi stated with soft tone, yet confident in her voice. And would it be such a shock for the people to discover if they really do exist? We do have talking animals of the size that any normal person would consider abnormal and monstrous. Those are summons and they are different from those yokai and spirits that you always spout about in your delirious. Tsunade was starting to get really riled up, but then she felt Tomoe put her hand on Tsunade's shoulder, forcing the blonde to face her glaring relative. Tsunade, thank you for walking me, but I'll be able to find my way out. And you can tell Shizune not to expect me for dinner. I'll be staying with Amagi for a while, helping her clean up her shrine. Tomoe made it clear that it wasn't up for discussion. Alright, just make sure that you and your friend do not disturb anyone, Tsunade said, as she headed to perform her main duties, leaving Tomoe to sigh and look at her friend. I'm sorry for her behavior. She still can't get over what had happened to Nawaki, and there are times when she feels like taking it out on someone. Tomoe sighed again. While I do sympathize with her losses, I'm afraid that I don't quite understand her animosity towards me. I do not recall ever angering her, or that something connected to religion had played a part in death of her little brother. Amagi noted. It's not about religion or what you believe in, but more about what it reminds her. Tomoe told Amagi, who looked at her with a question in her eyes. Nawaki, much like me, was closer to Mito than to Tsunade, and thanks to that, he gained an appreciation for all things supernatural, like with yokai and gods. Tsunade never liked that seeming obsession of his, and so now every time she hears about it, she gets reminded of Nawaki and... I see. Amagi understood what her friend meant. Let's change the subject, shall we? I see you are finally getting released. I wish I could welcome you for a quiet night together, but I'm afraid that it'll be quite hard for us to relax at the temple, at least for the time being. Why? Did something happen during the attack? Tomoe asked of Amagi. No, more like an aftermath of the attack. While many people have died, many more were left homeless and without much possessions on them. While the repair works have already started, it's the shinobi district, clan estates and strategically valuable areas that get priorities to being repaired, Amagi stated to Tomoe. And, as I'm sure you've seen yourself, over half of civilian portion of the village was destroyed, and people that live there now have nowhere to go. And so, given the fact that temple and its grounds weren't damaged, I've decided to let those people stay on the grounds, until they can go home again. You've turned the temple into a refugee camp for several thousand refugees? Tomoe asked, with Amagi nodding to her. Won't Inari be against it? Well, I did say that in order to appease the goddess, they would have to follow a certain set of rules, like cleaning the grounds, providing help when I needed and other simple things like that. Amagi noted. And if goddess is displeased, I'm sure I'll be able to convince her that it was for the better of everyone, though I doubt it'll even come to it. Inari is a kind goddess and isn't as temperamental as some other gods. You always speak about her as if you know her, Amagi. Tomoe noticed, with Amagi simply giving a small smile to her. I imagine the council appreciates your initiative. I hope they will at least compensate you for going through all the trouble. I don't know. Did Minato reward you for helping him stop the fox when he didn't ask you for help? Amagi asked, with Tomoe understanding what her friend meant. I see. But at least the people will know whom to thank when their own supposed representatives have turned their back against them, Tomoe said, as she continued walking. I think I'll still stop by, at least to see how things really are. Be my guest, Tomoe, you are always welcome there. Forgive me for asking, but are you in a hurry to meet someone? Amagi asked her, with Tomoe glancing at her. I've noticed that you aren't heading for the exit. Is there someone you want to see before you leave? There is. Tomoe nodded to her. I'm not sure if you've heard, but while I was recovering here, I've started to pay visits to Naruto, Minato's and Kushina's youngest son, Tomoe said, with Amagi nodding to her. I know that it sounds kind of strange for to do such a thing, but that kid. When I look at him, I can't just shake of the feeling that he feels lonely and is scared, despite how he looks. You may just start calling me crazy now, Amagi. If acting sympathetic and humane towards those that for some reason are left alone when they are not well, then being crazy isn't so bad in my mind, Tomoe. Naturally, Amagi didn't judge Tomoe. I've heard about the poor boy and his strange illness. Many claim that it is a curse sent upon the child by the Baijuu for imprisoning him and his brother and sister. Lord Hokage and his wife haven't confirmed or disclaimed those rumors, so nobody knows for certain what is going on with him. Doctors and Tsunade don't know either, and the kid just seems to fade away with each passing day. He is weaker every day and it appears that he might just pass away tomorrow or a day after tomorrow, if what I heard is true, Tomoe said with sadness in her voice, as they were nearing the child's room, before Tomoe turned to Amagi. Amagi, what do you know about the Shinigami? The gods of the dead and reapers of souls? They are creatures that reside in the realm of the dead, Yomi, and serve goddess of death and creation, Izanami. They are charged with seeing the souls of the dead being sent to either hell or heaven, as well as collecting them from the mortal realms. Most of the time they operate outside of the reach of normal people, unseen by them. Amagi told Tomoe. But I know of a few cases where they were purposefully summoned, but every summoning of the Shinigami is a certain death sentence, because the summoner is killed by Shinigami afterwards, Tomoe concluded. But Amagi, do the legends tell of any way to summon a Shinigami, but not die afterwards? Say, shift the price on someone else? Tomoe, summoning a Shinigami is always one-way trip, no matter how try to trick it, Amagi said in a serious tone of voice. I have heard of one legend where a man had managed to survive such a thing, but it didn't happen because of Shinigami being merciful to him. The man in question had previously warded himself off of Shinigami, but I do not know how he had done it. What I do know is that later on he had buried his wife, as the Shinigami had taken her from him as a payment and because it felt slighted by being denied its prize. Tomoe, why are you asking me all of this? Being denied of the prize. I'm asking you, because on the night of the attack, Minato had used Reaper Death Seal, a sealing jutsu that summons a Shinigami to create a seal of incredible power, Tomoe stated, much to the shock of Amagi. I know how to perform it too and I know the effects, but that night, Minato didn't die, but I have a feeling that it is Naruto who is paying the price now. It very well may be so. Shinigami are dangerous creatures to deal with. Is this the child's room? Amagi asked, with Tomoe nodding to her, before opening it. There, in a sterile clean room, strapped to the monitors, on a medical bed laid a small, unmoving child, with pale skin, closed eyes and just barely seen breathing. He didn't wail, cry or even move a muscle, and just simply laid there. A dark red patch of hair with streaks of white adorned his head, with eyes shut, and it created the appearance of the child being asleep. Tomoe knew that it wasn't the case and that the child was simply too weak at this point to even open his eyes, as she moved closer to him, taking a seat near him and very gently putting her right hand upon Naruto's little arm. He was colder than she remembered him to be, but every time she visited him, he felt colder than previously. Back when she first visited him, he still looked at her with his blue eyes, but yesterday he wasn't able to open them and couldn't move a muscle. Now he couldn't even react to her, but somehow Tomoe knew that Naruto felt her presence. She looked at him with sympathy in her eyes, before shifting her gaze at Amagi, before freezing. Amagi stood just there, her mouth agape and tears coming to her eyes, hands shaking, as she walked closer to the child. By the gods, how something so cruel could it happen to a child? Amagi asked in a shock, with her purple eyes looking directly at Naruto, as if seeing something that none could see. Amagi? Tomoe asked her. What? Is there something wrong? Something wrong? This child has been branded by Shinigami, Tomoe. Amagi almost shouted, shocking Tomoe. This isn't just wrong, it is. It is monstrous. What do you mean? What does it mean, being branded by Shinigami? Tomoe asked of her, with Amagi calming down a little, before quickly closing the door into the room. Afterwards, she stepped closer to Naruto, lightly putting her hand upon Naruto's stomach, before she began to chant. Tomoe had heard her friend chant prayers and such before, but this one was different, and she could sense that something was going on that she couldn't perceive just yet. After a few seconds of chant, Tomoe saw how Amagi's hand glowed with unnatural golden light as she touched the child. The moment she touched Naruto, a dark unnatural cloud appeared all around him, with a kanji on his stomach being revealed to both women. Tomoe looked at the kanji and nearly shuddered when she saw the shifting lines of that ethereal thing. This is the brand of Shinigami, one of the most horrific curses one can find in all of existence. Amagi told Tomoe. Those that have been branded do not find their souls being sent to hell or heaven, but suffer a far worse fate. They become food for Shinigami, souls torn apart and devoured by the death gods. And Naruto's soul is nearly gone already to Yomi, to be served on the platter to the one who branded him. How did you know that it was there, and what was it all about chanting in the glowing hand? It wasn't a jutsu, but it was something different. Tomoe noted. I am no shinobi, Tomoe, but those that think that world is inhabited by just those creatures that they know of are wrong in their assessment, and that is all I shall say on the matter at the moment. Amagi told Tomoe. This child. It pays for his father's actions. Is there any way to have this brand removed, or blocked from action? I know every seal created by the Uzumaki, there might just be. Tomoe was hopeful that with this information, she would at least be able to help the child. I am sorry, Tomoe, but once branded, there is no escape. The brand can't be destroyed, removed or passed on to someone else. Only someone of the highest planes of existence can remove something like this, and in this case, it would have to be the one who commands the Shinigami, Izanami, Amagi said with sadness in her voice, before looking at the child. I'm afraid that there is nothing that we can do, no matter what we try, and there isn't much time left for him. How long? Several hours, at most, I believe, Amagi said to Tomoe. Then. The least we can do to him is keep him company, at least so he wouldn't be so scared, Tomoe said with a resigned tone, with Amagi agreeing with her, sitting next to the child. If only the two know what was happening in the higher plane of existence. Different plane of existence. Yomi, land of the dead. Dark and inhospitable, where all that was living could not exist under any conditions, that was Yomi, the realm of the dead, and where all souls eventually found their way. It truly lived up to its name, for the realm thrived in shadows, plains where deadliest and poisonous grass grew, with trees wrecked with death, and where only creatures that are spawned here can survive. No living mortal should step into Yomi, lest they seek to remain here, only in form of its occupant, or a ghost in other words, and not every god or goddess braves these lands. But the one who was walking down the road leading to the dark castle situated right in the middle of this endless and desolate realm. It was a tall man of a godly physique, with long and luscious black mane of hair reaching to the middle of his back. His eyes were the color of gold, with a third eye closed on his forehead, with 3 lines crossing it. He had a beautiful face of a man in his late 20s without a speck of flaw upon his fair skin. His torso was exposed, revealing a body that any woman would drool over, with black pants and sandals covering his legs. He walked with a spear, or more specifically, a trident, in his right hand, made pitch-black material and with golden central spear adorning it. He traversed the realm of Yomi long and hard, ever since he departed from the realm of mortals, but he was now near his destination and he was going to see his will be done. In front of the traditional-looking castle stood guard numerous ogre-like creatures, massive in size and easily dwarfing the man. Those were Oni, yokai, created from evil, malice and dark energies, and who resided here in Yomi, serving as punishers of the evildoers and those that deserved its fate here. They also were frequent terrorizers of the mortal realms when they could escape from here, and more often than not, when people spoke of about Oni being real, they really were. Armed with giant clubs, axes, swords and all that was fit for their size and stature, a literal army stood watch before the castle, with its commander now approaching the traveling person. He was a red Oni with a white mane, dressed in armor of the samurai and with a giant otachi for a weapon. He looked down at the traveler and bellowed down on him. "What's this? A lost traveler? You are very far from home, pilgrim, and you should not have wandered here on your own." Oni spoke with laughter, while the man did not bat an eye. "But it is good that you've arrived to us. I and my boys have been getting bored and mistress won't give us any drinks, so now we'll have you entertain us. If you provide us with enough fun, we might actually let you live." Other Oni laughed when the commander spoke, but then all of them went silent when the man spoke. "I've come to see your mistress." "Step aside, Oni." The traveler's tone indicated that he was serious. "Huh? Or what, you think you can just come here and demand a meeting with our mistress without any care in the world? You think you threaten us in our realm? Let's see how you taste." Oni commander already raised his sword and prepared to swing it. Only to find his head cut off before anyone could even bat an eye, and when the severed lump of flesh hit the ground, the field was sounded with cries and shouts of pain. 2,000 Oni guarded the entrance into the castle, and it took 0.2 of a second of the stranger to cut through these beastly monstrosities. One such creature could be dangerous to deal with even for dozens of shinobi deal with, and there were instances in history with Oni destroyed or literally ate entire clans of shinobi. But for this person, they were merely dust that tried to stop the tsunami. With his sheer will, he opened the great gates of the castle and stepped through them into the inner yard of the keep. It was there that he was greeted by the second line of defenders of this castle, an army of Shinigami, assembled and ready to destroy this invader. The stranger didn't stop and continued to move forward, despite the fact that not even most gods would want to face such a dangerous force head-on. The leading Shinigami stepped before the stranger and spoke in a grave-inducing voice. "You trespass upon the domain of death, living one. There is nothing for you to gain here, only death which you brought upon yourself today," Shinigami stated to him. "Whatever you wish to gain, whatever you sought to accomplish, know that all of it shall end in your infinite suffering, for trespassing upon the lands of our mistress."